So thanks for that. Let me go back to share screen. All right, so thanks for that. Okay, so these are our 5 units. First unit, the history of hip hop. And of course, you can tell many of these are borrowed from some of the songs. We're on From Diggable Planets. And with this, I love this unit because we not only look at the Bronx, but we also have our students look at where they live in Silver Spring, in Chevy Chase, and they do a comparative analysis of where hip hop started to where they live now. So we're looking at census data, we're looking at other social economic data, and we're comparing. So they're doing these comparative analysis as they look at the history of hip hop, so they can also understand hip hop in the DMV. All right, then we look at the cultural development of hip hop. This is unit 2, and we break down the 5 cultural elements. So we're looking at graffiti, breakdancing, MCing, and also knowledge of self, right, and DJing. So we're looking at these 5 foundational elements. Then the social justice unit, which we are going to talk about today, we're going to spend most of our time there. All right. Media and corporate influence, and we call this hostile takeover. So we look at this, what we call the golden era of hip hop, the late 80s to early to mid 90s, when corporations began to step on the scene, realizing that they can make money off of this, and how this changes the culture and shifts it and brings it into the mainstream for good or bad. Then finally, the entrepreneurship and philanthropy. Now, we also had students that were part of this planning process. And of course, they want to know, how do they make money? They wanted to understand the money-making aspect of the culture. So we included the entrepreneurship and we added on the philanthropy, because when you look at those artists that have matured in the culture, many of the things that they're doing now philanthropically to give back to the community. So we look at this and we've tied these 2 together. And that's the final unit. And as a matter of fact, in the class now, we are just finishing the social justice unit. And because of time, we're probably going to move the entrepreneurship and the philanthropy up, and then move to the media and corporate influence to end out the year. So in our social justice unit, we tackle 2 areas. The first, we look at women in hip hop. So we study sexism, misogyny, objectification, rape culture, also empowerment, interdependence, and agency. And this unit has really been eye-opening for both myself and Sean, because of the pushback that we receive from many of the students in terms of, is hip hop misogynistic, or are women being empowered? And it's a very interesting conversation, but we see a generational divide, which is healthy, but it's their voice, and we definitely encourage it. But this is the first unit in this hip hop course. I mean, the social justice unit. Then we move on to the criminal justice system. Now, of course, for the criminal justice system, there's a great deal that we can touch on. The prison industrial complex, mandatory minimum, school to prison pipeline. Again, because of time and because where we feel many of our students can relate, we focused on these last 3 bullets. The history of policing, we look at stop and frisk policy, but of course we look at that rooted in the broken windows theory, and then police violence and brutality, and this fraught relationship between hip hop culture and the criminal justice system. And we are currently just ending out this unit here. So this is where we are, and this is the unit that we're going to focus on for the rest of this discussion. All right, so as we move forward, anybody have any questions, any comments, any concerns? Okay. Did they have somebody unmute themselves?
Yeah, Kenny, I have a question.
Sure.
I was wondering, in that section of women in hip hop, what are some of the challenges that you go through? Because I do find myself, even with my own loved ones, having quite a bit of a generational gap with the empowerment, feminist ideology to the misogynistic part of it.
Yeah. So for me, and this may be me being old school here, when we talk about this idea of objectification, sexualization, and the imagery of Black and brown women historically. I find it exploitative for the most part.
Yeah.
Many of my students, particularly the young ladies, find it empowering, but they make this, they differentiate. They'll always say, well, it all depends. So I'll use Megan Thee Stallion as an example. Is she choosing to represent herself in this fashion, or is she being guided by men behind the scenes in the industry? If she's deciding to show herself in this way, it's empowerment. If she's being directed to do so from those in the industry, then it's exploitation, it's objectification, etc. Right? And so we have that divided. For me, when that image is put out there, I still find it as being objectified, but they push back and they challenge. And we have some great discussions in class, but we have an opportunity to hear each other, respect each other's position. And, you know, that's where we pretty much stand. So I'm firm what I believe in, and they're firm, but they've pushed me.
No, I really appreciate this. I took this course in particular because I've been having that exact debate. Yeah. So I was just wondering if this was just my debate. No. So I really appreciate you expressing that. Thank you.
Not at all. No problem. Okay, very good. Let me go back to, anybody else have a question, comment, or concern? Is that?
Yeah.
You're breaking up a little bit.
So along those lines, have you found that the individual, can you hear me now? A little better.
Now I can hear you a little better.
Camera. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I was wondering if their view, the females in their view, did it change based on the information you shared that led up to the point? Was there a reflection that helped them to see that perhaps their thinking may have been somewhat distorted based on societal norms?
Because
in other words, sometimes the way we internalize and think about ourselves is based on societal norms. And what I saw in the curriculum that you kind of laid out, it helped me to rethink things. So I'm just wondering if that occurred.
It wasn't quite clear because you broke up. Can you type it in the chat? Can you type the question in the chat and I'll refer back to it? Okay. Brother Bay, your hand is up. We'll take this last question, then we'll move on. Kenny, you there? You had your hand up.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for this amazing curriculum. I just want to know, because I grew up like you when all of this came about, but to the question, is there a distinct line where we can look at this as an expression of art or an expression of exploitation of the artist, or as a culture? Because sometimes, you know, people can argue and say, well, it's freedom of expression, you know, it's creative, it's creativity, but is there a distinct like line or a demarcation where your course, your curriculum engage in or explore, where we can say, well, this is great artwork, or this is where it crosses the line and it goes into exploitation, not only with the artists where they're being robbed, but even as a culture being exploited?
That's part of the conversation that we have. You know, I mean, they are exposed to those different lenses, you know, in which to view this situation. So, you know, art being as subjective as it is, the exploitation part, you know, is also, it's always part of the conversation. But again, it's an ongoing debate that we have in the class, but it's a healthy debate that we have. Okay.
Thank you.
You got it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. And I'm gonna turn it over to Brother Sean.
All right, yep, right there. All right, so for the next part of the presentation, I'm pretty much going to walk everybody through one of our lessons. Obviously, you know, for the sake of time, we're not going to be able to get into the nitty gritty and have the discussions, but just to kind of highlight some of the types of discussions that we have. So for this lesson in particular, this was, you know, one that was created to really get the students to think about this long and troubling history between law enforcement and the Black and brown youth in these urban environments. But at the same time, you know, focusing on not necessarily stereotyping or criminalizing all police officers. And so we're going to talk about a range of different issues within that dynamic with the law enforcement and in the urban Black community and how it all interacts with hip hop. So you can go to the next slide. So when we look at social justice, and this is, you know, one of the main focal points of this topic, the main thing that we try to get the young people to focus in on is that, you know, everybody deserves an equal opportunity economically, politically, you know, rights and opportunities and access needs to be equal across the board. And so when we look at, you know, the striving and looking to get into why it is that some people get justice and don't, it's all about when we look at the redistribution of power. Oh, something's blocking. All right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Sorry.
There you go.
I thought I had control for a sec there. You know, looking at the redistribution of power to enhance, you know, the well-being of everybody within a community. And so we're looking at healthcare, justice, and again, economic opportunity for everybody. And you can go to the next slide, Ken. When we look at the justice system as a whole, that first interaction a lot of times in these urban communities is with police officers. But the system, the justice system, is so much bigger in it. And we try to touch on, you know, how young people in these communities interact with police officers and in the prisons and jails and then so on and so forth. The defense attorneys and the judges and the probation officers, all of these people are involved. And essentially, you know, when you look at how much money goes into this, these institutions, a lot of it comes from these communities that need it. And so we talk about that dynamic as well, not just that the focus on, you know, the officers and their interactions with the young people, but we play and we always try to bring in, you know, clips and get the hip hop into the classroom. And you look at Tupac, when he went to jail, he did this uncensored interview. He talks about this. And so we play, you know, clips and, you know, try to bring the hip hop artists and the history into the classroom firsthand. So this would be, you can go ahead and play.
So what I would tell, you know, anybody who would listen to me is that, you know, you got to start peeping game. Peeping the game. The game is the game of life. You got to start peeping how they're doing it. And if you see it, you can see the little signs that says that the guns are turning away from, you know, Europe and Russia and Iran and Iraq, and they're turning to us. Because look how they're doing our music. You know, you've never seen in no time in history where they've put so much attention on some music. You know what I mean? And made it like we are the cause of all these problems. You can look at it with a 3 strikes law. You can look at it where they're building more jails. They're starting to sell jail space. Yeah. You know, jail is big business. Believe me, I'm in jail. I see the big business. They charge you for your telephone calls. They charge you for disciplinary problems. Jail is big business. You know, you can feed a whole town off one jail. This jail is in the middle of a town that feeds everybody. Everybody works here. This is the main income. So if there was no criminals, nobody would work. You know what I mean? So if we don't start peeping that, we're in trouble.
So we bring Pac into the classroom and we hear firsthand, you know, just what, you know, it is that's going on in these communities and how, and we have the discussion, you know, and kids start to ask questions about, you know, this justice system and how it relates and how they interact with it within their communities. You can go to the next slide. Hip hop and social justice, you know, it's in all of the headlines, and we bring in the articles. We talk about, you know, the connection, you know, after big picture and looking at the justice system as a whole, we then bring in the hip hop and make the connection. You know, you look at that last article headline there, when your art can and will be used against you, hip hop expression and the criminal justice system. You know, we talk about the Bobby Shmurda case. We talk about how hip hop is used differently when you look at it as an art form versus, you know, the motion pictures you see in Hollywood. And why is it that, you know, a hip hop artist, his art can be, you know, used against him in the court because of something that he said, whereas artists, you know, just express themselves through movie in the same light. And so we had that discussion. So you go to the next slide. This is one, you know, a part of the lesson when you look at just how complex of a problem this is. We use this tree and you know, you may have seen even the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg, and then what's underneath. We use the tree because it says so much more to it than just what's not seen, the roots or underneath the iceberg and the tip of the iceberg. It has the roots, which isn't seen. It has the trunk of the tree, and then you have the leaves. And the leaves and the branches represent, you know, this pattern. So when you look at, we're talking about police brutality, digging beneath the surface and looking at what the root cause of these issues are, we would do an activity where we ask the students, you know, if they know who these individuals are on these trees. And then we would talk about their individual circumstances and what happened. And then, you know, the pattern being that they all were victims of police brutality. And so when you look at how complex this problem is, you really got to make sure that, you know, we don't want to make blanket generalizations or you know, stereotypes that lead to false accusations about all police officers. We want to look at the root problem of why this continues to happen to a certain group of people. And so we have that discussion, and the students get into it. You know, this is the stuff they want to talk about. We bring in the data. We really look at analyzing, you know, why is this pattern happening? Where is it happening? And to who it's happening? And then that's when we start to see the root, and we talk about the different roots. And in many instances, these roots are, you know, overbearing. They intercede, they work with one another. So you look at the white supremacy and the racial profiling and the origin of the police being the slave patrol. We talk about all of this and how they go hand in hand in many of these instances, and they create this data. It's not isolated incidents, it's a pattern that you start to see. And we talk about, here go some of the statistics. We would, you know, go down, and this is just, you know, statistics talking about, you know, the Black community, why they're twice as more likely to be arrested than, you know, white Americans. And then we break down the data, and we talk about one specific concrete example is the talk. Is anybody, you can do the little reaction icon if you're familiar with the talk. From a criminal justice standpoint, the talk. So we talk about, again, this is just more data. You can, we talk about men of color being, you know, twice as likely to be killed by police. How, you know, prior to the George Floyd and Derek Chauvin case, you know, 99% of those result in officers not being charged with the crime. So we talk about these patterns and this data, and the kids really get into it, and we start to break down this data. This is more talking about the funding. And obviously this is just like a whole bunch of data, but we would break it down, you know, different days, talk about different things. The police funding, they want to know why it is that we spend so much money on police compared to some of the other institutions, being, you know, FEMA and the CDC and the EPA. Why are those institutions and organizations within our government not getting as much funding? We then go and talk about the militarization of police and why that, you know, transition and evolution of an officer and what it used to look like you know, with the Billy Club to a gun to now they're fully armed tanks and soldier gear. And we talk about all that money is siphoned from the Department of Defense. And, you know, these are discussions, you know, the kids get into and they want to know why these things are the way they are. And this is another clip of Tupac talking about the militarization of the police. So we bring, again, back into hip hop.
I think
You can go ahead and play it.
that what we need to do as a community is start taking control back of our communities. You know, I understand it's always going to be drug dealing. I understand it's always going to be violence, but we just need to regulate it so that we can at least have like a peaceful zone where we can all be cool, you know, or else we're going to all die. We're going to all be destroyed because soon the government is going to make the young black male and the young Hispanic male the prime target of their all their resources and all their jail sentences and all their powerful weapons and technology will be the enemy. So unless we stop it now, regulate it, we're going to end up crashing against a wall.
So we bring again
I think
here, you know, what he was saying some, you know, 20, 25 years ago. And, you know, is that something that we're seeing today? And why do we continue to, again, see these patterns? And this was the talk I was referring to. So when we look at, you know, we ask the students, you know, has anyone had the talk with their parents? You know, who is this talk given to? What might or why might this talk be necessary for parents to have with their children? And so Clint Smith, author, spoken word poet, he does this piece where he talks about the talk and in a moment he had with his father and you know, explains what the talk is. And so we then we'll watch this clip and talk about the talk. And some of the students in the class have had the talk. You know, we share, you know, for those that might not know, you know, what the talk is and those that have had it, you know, why it is that we have this talk. And we bring it, you can go to the next slide. We take a look at a clip here, the movie The Hate U Give, which was based on the book. And this is the beginning, the opening scene where he actually has the talk. This is a short clip. We'll play it here in a sec, but he talks about, you know, what to do when you're with, you know, when you engage with an officer. And so that's essentially what the talk is that, you know, a lot of parents have with young, you know, teens in the Black and brown community. And so you can go ahead and play it, Kenny.
Oh, hold on.
Now, one day y'all gonna be with me and you best bet we gonna get pulled over. I don't mean I did something wrong. Maybe I made a mistake driving or maybe I ain't do nothing at all. You gonna see me with my hands like this on the dashboard. Come on. Now you keep your hands posted because moving makes the police get all nervous. If I ain't with you, you ask for me. It can get real dangerous, so don't argue with them. But keep your hands where they can see them.
So again, after, you know, watching the clip, we would, you know, have discussion about, you know, who has had the talk. This is an example of a political cartoon we might use to start class off as a warm up. So examining, you know, political cartoons, examining, you know, video documentaries, listening to the music. This one here, you can see a young white boy. He says, "Mom, I'm going out." Mom says, "Put on your jacket." On the right, you have a black boy. He says, "Mom, I'm going out." She says, "Put on your jacket, keep your hands in sight at all times. Don't make any sudden moves. Keep your mouth shut. Around police, don't run." So you see the contrast. And then we talk about, again, why that is, that there's a difference in, you know, or why there seems to be these two Americas in which young people of color operate and white Americans operate. So.
And then I'll step in here. Oh, hold on.
Mm-hmm.
So with this right here, now I wasn't looking at the chat. I'm sorry if because when I pull up the chat, the box came up. So with the unit assessments, these are a few of the things Some we've done, some are aspirational. COVID has really disrupted some of the things we plan to do. So analyzing and deconstructing lyrics, they also have opportunities to create their own pieces, whether it's visual. We do graffiti early on, text, orally, meaning they can recite their poems, rhymes, or what have you. Sonically, we do have some students that produce. In my class yesterday, one of my students, I start my class off allowing the students to say good news or worthy news. He sold 5 beats over the course of last week. So they bring that into the class. Right now, what their assignment is they are now researching, trying to find a song rooted in hip hop culture that talks about injustice, which is not going to be a difficult thing to do. But we've deconstructed some songs already, those they can't use, but now they're researching and finding their own. Then they have to evaluate the song on a 5 mic scale. So that's the assignment that's outstanding now. Letter writing campaign. 2 local, state, or national, government or political officials that deal with this. So they have to research at what level are politicians actively involved in dealing with this issue with injustice in the criminal justice system. Social media campaign. We have not done the podcast yet, but this is something we're talking because we have combined our classes at Blair and BCC, and we allow the students to interact. And we're thinking about starting some type of a podcast or a zine, a digital magazine, to display what they're doing in class, because we want this to be bigger than Montgomery County. So we're looking now into seeing how that may work in the fall. All right, so with that, we have about 5 minutes, and I'm gonna stop share and see if y'all have any questions, comments, concerns. And I'm gonna try quickly to check out what's in the chat. So come on, y'all, talk to us. You can unmute yourself.
As you guys were talking about the talk, unfortunately my parents didn't give me the talk, and I grew up in Langley Park, Maryland, and people always warn me, man, you got MS-13 in your neighborhood, you got this gang in your neighborhood, you got the other crew in your neighborhood, but they never bothered me. As a matter of fact, they looked out for me. And coming back from work, 4 police cars surround me. I'm wearing a Walkman, which is the equivalent to an iPod today, right? So I can't hear what's happening. I see 4 police cars surrounding me, guns pointed out at me at 16 years of age. And I get thrown against a car by police officers that look like me, that don't look like me. And it was just one of the most humiliating, dehumanizing experiences I've ever had in my life. So, the hip hop was something that kept me sane because they talked about these experiences.
So if I can step in, Jose, it's cathartic for a lot of artists when they write about these things, right? It's cathartic for them, which I'm really learning about now. And I love when we do this part of the unit, because when we start off with, have you ever heard of the talk? It is so interesting. The white students will say, the birds and the bees. My parents, yeah, I've heard that talk. While students of color particularly are Black and brown boys, they're like, yeah, whatever. This is the talk that we've had. And that leads us into these different perspectives, these 2 societies that we live in, and what we mean by the talk. And so I see somebody put in, Mr. Muhammad put in LL Cool J's Illegal Search. So we deconstruct as a class that song. So L talked about that 30 years ago. We look at the second verse of 99 Problems from Jay-Z, and how we're looking at these songs 30 years apart, but they're saying the same thing. And then we look at, I don't allow them to do NWA F the Police. That's just too easy. They all know that one, but they have to do research on their own to try to find other songs. But I'm looking at many of the songs that you have here, and you'd be surprised of how many of these songs that our kids are aware of. But again, we're talking about the framing of this through hip hop culture. And much of this is cathartic for many of those artists to put this out there and give language forcefully, unintentionally, what many of us experience. And it's an extremely powerful lesson that they all engage in, regardless of what side of the fence they stand on. Okay, so anybody else? But thanks for that, Jose. Appreciate that, bro.
Kenny and Sean, there is no doubt in my mind the impact that you have on your students in the classroom. But I'm curious, what, kind of like with MSP, right? You see this transformation of this young person or the young people in your classes. What gives you life at the end of your semester or at the end of the year that you know that this curriculum works and is necessary for our kids?
For me, it's the fact that they can't stop talking about what we discuss in class, that the conversations continue, number one. Number two, and I've heard this time and time again, and I had this on a survey at the end of the class, I never knew this about hip hop. All they know about is what they see either from their social media platforms or with mainstream media puts out there. And for me, it's just broadening their understanding of what hip hop culture is about. And that's really heartwarming to me, because now they look at hip hop through a different lens, right? And so that's extremely powerful for me to do that, because had it not been for hip hop, KRS-One, Uno number one, I probably would not be a teacher. Hip hop culture was huge in my life and helped me become an educator.
Yeah, I was just going to add, for me, it's really just the day-to-day, the discussion, and having taught other class, U.S. history, I teach peace studies, having, been a special educator for 10 years and teaching a lot of different content areas, the way it's harder to see, it's been virtual the past year, but they light up and they engage. And like Kenny said, the discussions just carry over from class to class. And it's like, they can't stop talking about it. They want to keep talking about it. They want to learn more about the culture. And then, similar to what Kenny said with the survey at the end, oh, I wish this was a year course. They want more of it. And so you can tell in the day-to-day and discussions and engagement that, they're receiving it. They're receiving it well. And we give them those experiences, as Jose alluded to, that experience that he had. He might not have had a safe space to share and discuss that experience with anybody at 16. And so kids bring these things into the classroom or their friend experienced it, and they have that space to really just engage with stuff that's meaningful to them. And you can see it daily when just having those discussions.
Kenny, I wanted to jump in real quick. I know we kind of at the end.
Yeah, what's
Again,
up,
thank you. Thank you so much for this. I've been thinking a lot about it. Also a hip hop head. I don't jump into all the conversations you guys are having, but
I'm gonna have you come in and talk about DJing. I know you DJ, bro. You got to come in and talk about
Listen,
DJing.
man, the DJ thing is like the super duper side gig, kind of in the closet kind of thing. But neither here nor there. I've been thinking a lot about this as it relates to middle school. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'd be interested to hear what your take would be on what if there was like a prerequisite, if there was a course that kids should leave middle school with that would get them ready for your course, what would that be? What would that thinking be? Are there elements of what you're doing that should exist in every class, right? That you think kids in middle school might be able to engage in. So by the time they get to high school, whether they take your hip hop class or Sean's US history class, they're like, I'm ready to get into whatever it is, or more importantly, whether or not they hear a song and they're able to say, I got it, I understand exactly what's happening.
Yeah, so real quick, because I know we have to go, in terms of a prerequisite, what I'll have to say, the core courses that they take in social studies is probably the best foundation. But with that said, the way they are changing the curriculum at those levels is extremely important. The old curriculum, I think, is a bit outdated. The newer curriculum, which they receive some pushback, which is more inclusive, that's the curriculum that they need. They need to be able to understand, to see, to study US history with these different voices involved. They need to see themselves in the curriculum. So when they come to me as juniors and seniors, or to Sean, they have that background knowledge and they know how to, they know that there are other stories out there. Because one of the main reasons why I wanted to put this course in public schools is because it is extremely empowering for them to sit back we listened to Rakim, and when you listen to that album, Paid in Full, Rakim was 17, 18 years old when he wrote that. We think of him as a grown man writing those songs. Nas dropped out of school after 8th grade with the blessings of his father. And he is an icon in hip hop culture. So the school system was actually holding them back, right? And when these kids can come into this space and say, ah, y'all see me, you know, you're giving me voice. That's extremely important. I'm talking too much, man. We got to go. I'll stay here all day with y'all, man, all day. So with that said, brothers and sisters, fam, we appreciate y'all being here. The discussion continues. The discussion continues. All right. So y'all go ahead and go to lunch, and then we'll see y'all at the next day. Come to the afternoon panel discussion. Got some great panelists talking about hip hop in the classroom. Some of my role models, no doubt. Thank you, Brother Tracy. All right. Sean, stay on for a minute.
Amazing work, guys.
Thank you. Sorry we couldn't hear your question. You were breaking up. Sorry we couldn't address the question. Okay. All right. All right, let me just how you feel, man?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. Pretty good.
Okay. All right, cool. Travis, you there? T-Pain, you there, bro? Okay. He's one of the leads. He's cool. Yeah, okay. So 2 down, man.
Yeah,
Got that one out. So yeah, thanks for showing up, man, and being a part of this, man. Definitely appreciate you.
Likewise.
Definitely appreciate you.
Man.
Yeah, so I think we're good. So I got one more. I got a panel discussion later on. I got to prep for, so I'm gonna go ahead and get ready for that. And do you want to connect tomorrow morning?
Yeah, let's do that. Yep. 8?
Okay, 8 o'clock.
Okay.
All right, so I'll see you tomorrow.
All right, sounds good.
All right, peace.
All right, peace.